Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Collider Mailbag, the all mailbag show here on Collider Video, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. My name is John Campia. I am the senior producer over here at Collider Video, and I'm so glad you decided to make this show a part of your Sunday afternoon. And listen, if you've got a question or a topic you'd like us to address on any of our shows, you can email us right here at this email address, collidervideo@gmail.com. Send on in your questions. Maybe you'll see it on the weekend mailbag show. Maybe you'll see it on Monday through Friday on Movie Talk. We get thousands of questions, so please understand, be patient. Understand, we will try our best to get your question on the air. Now, hey, listen, before we get into the actual mailbag questions, I want to address a question I've been getting from lots of you guys in our mailbag, on Twitter, on Facebook, on our YouTube channel. And we've had a lot of you guys asking us about the audio podcasts. Because as you know, when we were still over at AMC, we used to put out audio podcasts. And since we moved over to Collider, we haven't been putting out podcasts. I will let you know, we're looking at the issue and trying to figure it out. Now, in the description of this video, right near the top, you will see a link I'm going to put in called The Question About Podcasts. And I'm going to put in a link to a YouTube video that I made last week. And basically in that video, I explained the situation where we are right now, why we aren't doing podcasts right now, and how we might do podcasts again in the future. I would love it if you guys who are interested in the audio podcasts of our shows to go on over to that link, check it out, and then leave your feedback, because really, you guys, we listen to your voices. We want to hear what you have to say. So if you're interested in the podcasting situation and what's going on with our audio podcasts, because we don't put them out right now, look in the description of this video, find that link to the question about podcasts, click on that link, watch that video, and then leave us your feedback. That would be awesome. All right, with that out of the way, let's get on to our first mailbag question of the day. And the first question today comes to us from Amon Warmann, who writes, I'm sure you'll agree that one of the best parts of the job is getting to interview the talent who make these films. If you could interview any actor or filmmaker, dead or alive, about a movie, who would it be? For me, I'd love to spend an hour or 50 talking to Heath Ledger about The Dark Knight. I'd have so many questions. All right, Amon, thank you so much for the question. And yeah, I mean, doing this job, one of the interesting things about this job is that every week, we get to go to all these movie junkets, and we get to sit down, talk to the filmmakers and talk to the cast and talk to the actors. And that's cool. But I got to tell you, it is not my favorite part of this job. It's really weird. Go back a couple of years as I was in this industry. And when we first started getting all these invitations to go to the junkets and interview the actors and things like that, I at the time thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But I have to admit, I got bored of them. Every once in a while, there would be a movie I was super interested in, or a particular actor I was really interested in, or a particular director I was really interested in, and I'd get excited for those. But for the most part, I got kind of bored of the junkets. And what I started realizing too was that most of the junket videos that we would do these interviews with these actors and put them up on our YouTube channel, what we started noticing was a lot of you guys weren't even watching them. Like, you just weren't interested. So what happened was that eventually I had other people on our staff who were asking to go and talk to these movie stars and talk to the director. So I started letting other people on staff go and cover the junkets. And it got to the point where I was only going to cover junkets like maybe 2 or 3 a year. And normally those were Marvel films. Guardians of the Galaxy I would go do. Avengers I would go do, things I was really interested in. But otherwise, I just like the girl. Sinead just got to go to New York and interview Ryan Reynolds. She was so excited about that. But for myself, I've actually kind of got bored of it, as I'm sure I didn't get nearly as bored by it as these actors are doing these junkets. They must be so ridiculously bored of doing those. But that's not to say that there weren't some really cool moments when I got to sit down and talk to some really cool people and really, have a really great time. So you bring up, if I had to choose one, who would it be? You mentioned it'd be Heath Ledger. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't have been, all due respect to the dead. I'm just saying, I wouldn't have been all that interested in talking to Heath Ledger. I would have been very interested in doing the junket for The Dark Knight, but Heath Ledger, and a lot of people get upset when I say this, but it's true. Heath Ledger did give us the single greatest performance in a comic book movie ever. Not just villain, He gave us the single best performance we've ever had in a comic book movie. His portrayal as the Joker, obviously. And every once in a while, he also had some other great performances as well. His performance in Brokeback Mountain and others. I mean, he was capable of some really great performances. But Heath Ledger was also a very hit and miss actor. For every, Brokeback Mountain or Dark Knight, he would also have like Casanova, or he would have several, name them, a ton of other films where he just was not all that good in. So he was a little bit hit and miss. When he was on, he was A-list. When he was off, he was not. And so I personally, for me, it wouldn't be Heath Ledger. For me, it would actually be somebody who I have never had the opportunity to meet or interview yet. And that is Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, I think, is the greatest filmmaker in history. He's made every kind of movie you can possibly. He's made comedy, he's made drama, he's made period piece, he's made sci-fi, he's made action, he's made, you name it, he's done it. He's done adventure, he's done, you name it. Steven Spielberg has done it. He's the best we've ever had. The same guy who made, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the same guy who made Schindler's List, is the same guy who made E.T., is the same guy who made Jaws, is the same guy who made Saving Private Ryan, is the same guy who, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There are tons of this guy's films are on the greatest films of all time list. That's Steven Spielberg. He's done it all. He's done every genre. He's made some of the greatest, most iconic, most incredible films of all time. And he has worked with the best of the best of the best. So to sit down with a guy like Steven Spielberg, who not only in his own right is the most fascinating filmmaker ever, but he has worked with the greatest film people ever. So get to ask him and get him to tell stories about that. What I would give to have an hour to sit down with Steven Spielberg and just talk to Steven Spielberg, more accurately, sit down with Steven Spielberg and have him just talk to me, would be the highlight probably of my career. It would absolutely be. I've never had a chance to meet him. Man, would I love it. So yeah, my answer to that would be unequivocally, undoubtedly, without any hesitation, Steven Spielberg. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question we have today comes to us from Don Figueroa, Figueroa? I'm butchering your name, Don. I'm sorry. And Don writes, after watching Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad trailers over and over again, I'm starting to think Jared Leto's Joker is not the original one, and that he's maybe the former Robin, Jason Todd, or even Tim Drake, turned into the new Joker. Who else would know Bruce and send him that taunting message that clearly freaked him out? I think the original Joker tortured and marked up Robin to the point of breaking him. I think the reason Bruce has retired as Batman is because he probably has killed the original, but joke's on him, Joker turned Robin. Or you probably meant Robin turned Joker. Anyway, thoughts? Thanks a lot for the question, Don. You are not the only person online to be floating this theory around. There are a lot of people out there who Robin comes into in a couple of places here. Number one, a lot of people think the person Joker is torturing in the Suicide Squad trailer is, Jason Todd or Tim Drake or Dick Grayson or whoever. He's torturing Robin. But if you watch the trailer, it's clear they show it. It's actually Harley Quinn before she becomes Harley Quinn. It's actually Harley that he's got on the table that he's talking to. So the trailer shows it. So that's not really, I don't think that's the issue. But you raise an interesting question. What if Jared Leto isn't the original Joker? What if he's actually a former Robin who is now the Joker and Batman killed the Joker sometime years ago? Okay, totally a very interesting theory that I've heard a lot of people floating around online. It's very interesting. And I'm not going to say it's an impossibility. I think there's a chance that that's possible. Now, do I actually think that's the case? No, I don't think that's the case. But it's possible, and I'm not going to discount it out of hand. But the reason I don't think it's the case is because, number one, they're just starting this brand new cinematic universe. And so pulling a twist like this isn't actually the original Joker, that doesn't make sense to me. I think you go with the Joker. But the biggest thing in all of this is simply this. Jared Leto is older than Ben Affleck. Jared Leto's 43 years old. Ben Affleck is 42 years old. So to say that Jared Leto was actually, that this Joker, who's actually older than Batman, was at one point a Robin character, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because what it says to me is that if you wanted to go that route and you wanted to make the new Joker somebody who was once a Robin, then why wouldn't you go out and get a 25-year-old actor, a 30-year-old actor, a 32-year-old actor? Why wouldn't you go out and get somebody like that? Why specifically go out and get somebody who's basically the same age as your new Batman, as Ben Affleck? So now, what goes against me saying that, though, here's why I could be wrong. Well, there's a million reasons I could be wrong. But anyway, one of the reasons I could be wrong, though, is that when you look at the Robin suit, now I put out a video a while ago. Look, for years I've been saying I don't want Robin in this DC cinematic universe, because I don't want a Batman who's so stupid that he takes a 14-year-old child, yay, Batman, let's go fight crime. I don't want that. I don't want an idiot Batman in the new DC cinematic universe, okay? It works fine in the cartoon, works fine in the comic books, would not work in the cinematic universe. I said that before, I stand by it. But I put out a video a couple months ago saying, well, could Robin work in the cinematic universe? Yes, he could, and here's how. And the main thing was that Robin is not our understanding of Robin. It's a different understanding of Robin. Robin is actually a guy who's a partner for Batman and is an adult. Batman didn't start bringing little children into crime fighting with mobsters with guns. He had found another adult who could kind of be his partner. And adult doesn't mean he has to be the same age as Batman, but like somebody who's 21, who's 24, whatever. And when you look at the Batman v Superman trailer and you see that Robin outfit in the glass case, that is clearly, that ain't the outfit of a boy. When you look at the arms and the chest and the size of that costume, that was the outfit of a man. And so that could suggest that Batman had a Robin at one point who was really close to him in age. He was more of a partner. He wasn't a sidekick. He was kind of like a secondary partner in the Batman crime fighting team, right? And if that's the case, then it's possible that Jared Leto could have at some point been Tim Drake, could have been Dick Grayson, could have been Jason Todd, could have been whatever, and was turned mad by the former Joker and is now the Joker. That's a possibility. I still don't think that's the case. I still think they specifically went out and got Jared Leto to be a guy who's the same age as Ben Affleck, our new Batman. He has been an adversary of Batman throughout Batman's career, and he's still around today. And I think that's the way they're going to play it. I think it's going to be straight up and not a lot of underhandedness. But I ain't going to sit here and say it's impossible, because this is a new DC cinematic universe. They could pull anything out of their hat at this point. So I'm not going to write off anything as an impossibility. Thanks for the question. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Terrence Finney, who writes, "Hey guys, I just wanted to know who you think would be a good director for the Black Panther. How about John Schnepp, since he worked on the animated series? I would like to see someone like Reginald Hudlin, because his background with movies like House Party and Boomerang, he wrote some pretty good arcs in the comic series. I'm just saying." Well, thanks a lot for the question. Ever since Ava DuVernay kind of backed out, a lot of people have been asking who would be a good director for Black Panther. I don't think John Schnepp would be the guy to do it. I don't think I would be the guy to do it. I also don't think Reginald would be the guy to do it. Yeah, he wrote some stuff in the comic books, but just because you wrote stuff in a comic book does not mean you're a feature film visual arts director. Not at all. And I don't like the films he did before. So I wouldn't even consider him, to be honest with you. There are a couple of very interesting names that come out. Number one that I think of is F. Gary Gray. This is a guy who's done some very interesting films that I think have shown elements in each of his films that could very easily transfer over to a Black Panther film. One of which is Law Abiding Citizen. I actually like Law Abiding Citizen a lot more than most people. I love that movie. And I didn't love the last 15, 20 minutes. I thought it kind of fell apart in the last 15 or 20 minutes, yes. But the rest of the film up to that point, beautifully crafted, some really cool characters, the way he handled it, the way it was shot, all that kind of stuff. I see somebody like that being able to bring some elements of that over into a Black Panther. Now, he's also got a very highly anticipated movie. He's got Straight Outta Compton coming out. That looks really great. He did Get Shorty, so he's got some, like, Marvel likes to have some fun too in their films, right? And if you look at like Get Shorty, you know, he's shown that he can bring elements of fun to it as well. The Italian Job shows that he's able to do action, you know, in the more traditional sense of action as well. So I think he'd be a very interesting choice. Another guy I'd be very interested in directing a Black Panther would be Nicholas Winding Refn. When you look at films like, if you want to look at creating an iconic kind of figure, look at Bronson. Look what he did with Tom Hardy and Bronson. And remember, we always talk about how, you know, the number one job of a director is to get the best performance out of their actors that they possibly can. And when you look at a director like Nicholas Winding Refn, look what he did with Tom Hardy and Bronson. Or one of his more popular films, Drive. Look what he did with Ryan Gosling in Drive. And once again, when you look at those films, you can see elements in those films. Like, no one of his films is like what you would picture of Black Panther. But if you look at the elements that you'd want to put into Black Panther, look at what he does in films like those. I think he'd be a very interesting choice for a movie like Black Panther. However, my number one choice for a director for Black Panther would probably be Antoine Fuqua. I absolutely love what Antoine Fuqua did in the Equalizer with Denzel Washington. I know a lot of people like that movie. I actually loved that movie. I thought that movie was great. And once again, look at elements. The Denzel character would very much, other than some personality differences, I mean, but you look at how formidable he is, and you look at he's quiet in some sense, but extremely powerful and dangerous. But he reins his power in, all that kind of stuff. I think that an Antoine Fuqua would be incredible for that. Now, he's also got a movie coming out here pretty soon that a lot of people are looking forward to in Southpaw. So me personally, look, any of those guys, I would be big on. And there's 100 other directors that I'm sure would be very, very good for it. But off the top of my head, those are the guys, and particularly Antoine Fuqua, I'd be very interested in seeing directing a Black Panther movie. So those would be my personal choices at any rate. All right, let's move on. The next question today comes to us from Richard, who writes, I'm just wondering if you have seen the trailer for Sinister 2 that was out a few months ago, and if so, what your take on the new storyline and the added involvement of the boogeyman. Thanks for the constant videos and keep up the good work. Well, thanks a lot for your question, Richard. Hey, if we're going to talk about Sinister 2, let's start by talking about Sinister 1. I really enjoyed Sinister 1. Like Law Abiding Citizen, though, I kind of felt like that movie, worse than Law Abiding Citizen. I felt the first Sinister completely fell to pieces in the last like 10, 12 minutes of that film. It just came right off the rails. But up until that point, I was totally in on that movie. That movie had me hooked. It had me hook, line, sinker. I was totally immersed in the movie. I thought it was creepy. I thought it was great. It started to lose me with that, John Schnepp and I talk about this a lot, with that one scene where he's looking at the picture of, I can't remember the name of the boogeyman, the Figueroa or whatever the name of it is. So his picture's on the screen, and then the guy looks away, and then the picture on the screen goes. I mean, that was kind of lame. That was pretty lame. It was just the execution of it. In theory, it sounds like it would be creepy, but just the way it was executed. Like, for instance, in the trailer for Sinister 2, they have kind of the same thing. There's a photograph of the boogeyman, and then he turns to it, and for whatever reason, it worked. It felt a lot more effective in the trailer for Sinister 2 than it actually was in the movie in Sinister 1, so I can't really put my finger on it, but yeah, handsome Hawk, of course, Ethan Hawke in the film. I thought he did a really good job on it. Unfortunately, he's not going to be back for the sequel, obviously. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very effective, low-budget horror film the strength of it was just the way they told that story. And then, unfortunately, they didn't know how to bring it to resolution. And that the last half of the third act just like for me just kind of spun out of control and kind of soured what would have been an overall fantastic horror movie experience for me. So overall, though, I like the film and I recommend it to people. I just tell people, get ready. The last part of the movie will lose you, but for the most part, it's an enjoyable movie. Moving on to Sinister 2 now, I loved that trailer. Honestly, I think it's a great trailer. I had goosebumps watching it. I felt kind of creeped out. I looked around a little bit after the trailer stopped playing to make sure, I was still the only person in the room. I thought it was pulled off really well and was quite effective as a trailer. And I consider myself somebody who's really looking forward to seeing it. I thought it looked great. I'm also looking forward to seeing more. Let's not just remake the first Sinister where the boogeyman is just, he's not called the boogeyman. I'm sorry I forget his name, but let's not just redo the first Sinister where you only see glimpses of the boogeyman. We got introduced to the boogeyman in the first one. We were introduced to him. Now let's use him. And the trailer seems to suggest they are going to use him more. And he looked pretty cool and pretty creepy. And the way they were using the kids. So sign me up as somebody who's a fan of the Sinister 2 trailer, and I myself am looking forward to it. I just hope they figure out a way to finish the film better than the way they finished off Sinister 1. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Sean Bates. And Sean Bates writes, "Hey guys, love the show." Thank you very much, Sean. My question is regarding film scores. The other day on Movie Talk, Ellis was talking about Hans Zimmer being able to redeem a poor scene in a movie with a good score. So it got me wondering, is there any level of responsibility a composer has for a movie being good or bad? Does a film score really have any effect on a film's quality? And if so, why are there poor films with good scores? Some that come to mind are Transformers, Terminator 3, Die Hard, or Die Another Day. Heck, even The Last Airbender. Thanks and keep up the awesome work. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Sean. Yeah, I mean, think of it as this. I just finished watching, actually, just for the heck of it, I watched the original teaser trailer to the first Star Wars movie, right? And it shows that there is no John Williams score in the original trailer, in the original teaser. And it shows some of the scenes of like when the Millennium Falcon, after it escaped from the Death Star and it was fighting a bunch of those TIE fighters first before it could get away. And there's no John Williams music to it. And it felt dry and it felt stagnant. It didn't feel exciting. It didn't feel, there's no tension in it. All because that John Williams score wasn't there. And when you watch these iconic scenes without their score, suddenly you realize how vital that score is to that scene. Because then I hopped online, I found that same scene with the John Williams score, and all of a sudden that scene is awesome again, right? But it's the same as any element. Look, there are many, many working, moving parts and many, many pieces of the puzzle that go into making a movie a good movie. Direction, the writing, the cinematography, the acting, the dialogue, the music, the visual effects in some cases, the action, the comedy, the whatever. There are so many pieces that go into what makes a movie a good movie that no one of them can guarantee it. Like you're asking the question, how come some movies with good scores end up being bad movies? Well, it's because the same reason that you get some movies that have some terrific performances in them, but are horrible, horrible movies. We've seen that. We've seen that all the time. Just on yesterday's mailbag, we were talking about that that Will Smith movie, like 7 Pounds, I think it's called. It's a bad movie, but Will Smith actually gives a terrific performance in it. There are movies that, I've read the scripts and just reading the scripts, they're great scripts, but the movie turns out bad. So the musical score is no different than any of that. It's one piece of the puzzle. It's an important piece, but it's still just one piece of the puzzle. So you can get some great movies that actually have some forgettable scores, or you can have a great score to a movie that ends up being bad. What is really special when you get these movies that win Best Picture and stuff like that, are when all of the pieces come together. When you get a great score in the hands of a great director who has great actors to work with, and they're working off a great script. When you get all of that, all these things put together, that's when you get magic. Are you going to have an all-time great movie that's a good movie with a terrible score? Probably not. But that's why you're going to get great performances in bad movies. You're going to get great movies that might have a weak performance in it. And the same goes with the musical score as well. So it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's an important piece, but it ain't going to single-handedly determine whether a movie is great or bad. A great score can make a good movie a great movie, but a bad score isn't going to make a great movie suddenly a bad movie. You know, it's just one piece of the puzzle. All right, let's move on to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Lamar Smith, who writes, I've been sitting on this question ever since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended. It's ended its season, and almost too late because I thought since John had left. But do you think Marvel might bring in characters from their TV and Netflix properties into the next Avengers movie? The MCU doesn't have that many heroes in the movies, and in the comics, Doctor Strange led what was basically a small army to Thanos' throne. Thanks a lot for the question, Lamar. First of all, let's get this out of the way. Forget what happened in the comics. Since when does any Marvel movie follow beat for beat what happens in the comics? They don't. The Marvel movies take the essence of who these characters are, and they're making their own stories, and they're happening in different order. So honestly, just because something happens in a comic book, don't suddenly think that has anything to do with what they're going to do in the movie universe. I'm also going to challenge you a little bit when you say that there aren't that many heroes in the MCU. According to what? According to the comic books? Maybe, but forget the comic books. In Captain America Civil War alone, we have Iron Man, Captain America, War Machine, Falcon, Black Widow, Ant-Man, Scarlet Witch, and I know I'm forgetting because there's probably like 10 of them in there. That's just in that movie alone. Forget Thor and the Hulk and other characters we've seen, Nick Fury and blah, blah. There are, for a movie cinematic universe, there are plenty of characters. Let's not worry about how many characters there are. But let's go to really what the core of your question is that do I think we're going to see them bringing in characters from television, particularly Netflix or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., into their movie universe? I don't think so in anything other than brief glimpses or cameos. I remember last year at the big Marvel special event that they held at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, where Kevin Feige came out and announced Black Panther and announced Captain America Civil War and announced the full Marvel movie slate going into 2019. One of the people asked him about television, and one of the things Kevin Feige said, who is the high grand poobah of the cinematic universe, they asked him about the television stuff, and Kevin Feige said something that really interested me, because if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it'll say Kevin Feige is a producer. If you look at some other television stuff, you'll see Kevin Feige's name as producer. But in that event that myself and a couple of other of the Collider Video guys were at, Kevin Feige directly said, I wouldn't know anything about television. I have nothing to do with the television properties. I strictly focus on the movie stuff. That then raises a question about, well, then, how much are they actually going to be involved? Let's look at a television show like Daredevil on Netflix, right? Great show. Still not the best comic book show on TV right now. I still think The Flash is the best comic book show, but I loved Daredevil. I watched the entire first season in 2 days of Daredevil. Liked it a lot. And Daredevil is not like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. trip over themselves to drop as many Avengers references as possible. What, you're lifting the hammer? What do you think you are, Thor? Man, I know Captain America wouldn't like that very much. Oh gosh, I don't even think what Tony would do with his Iron Man outfit here. Oh, when the alien invasion and blah, blah. I mean, it's almost like the writers of that show get paid $1 for every time they drop an Avengers reference. I mean, they just trip over themselves. Now, contrast that with Daredevil, where the references were so obscure, it was almost to the point that they were hiding that Daredevil's in the same cinematic universe. So much for after I watched it for the first time, I didn't even think they were in the same cinematic universe. Yeah, there was a Captain America joke, but it was the kind of joke that you could have made in Friends or you could have made on Lost. Like, it was the kind of joke that anybody could have made a Captain America joke. It didn't necessarily mean they were in the same cinematic universe. And it took somebody emailing me this picture from the news editor's office, where in the background, you have to freeze it and look, but in the background, there's a picture of the Leviathan from Avengers, the first Avengers movie, laying on the ground in a destroyed building. And that makes it obvious this is the same universe per se. So that contradicted me, and clearly there was the same universe. But like I said, when you compare what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does, where every single episode they got to vomit out 55 references to Avengers. In Daredevil, they completely acted like it was a different universe. They put in the little clues to say this is the universe, but they didn't even say alien invasion. They just said, I think they said Battle of New York once. They would never reference the Chitauri. They would never reference anything. They acted as if it was a different cinematic universe, even though they clearly set it up that this is the same universe. This is the same New York that was attacked by the aliens, even though they never said aliens or anything like that. Because they were so obscure with their references, it leads me to believe, I'm not discounting it. I'm not discounting that Daredevil could show up in the next Avengers. I'm not going to sit here and say it's an impossibility because I don't believe that. But I don't think it's what they're going to do. I think when I watch Daredevil, I got the sense that what the showrunners of Daredevil were doing was trying in as much to function as if this is his own world. That maybe we're acknowledging that other superheroes exist out there, but as far as how we function, we're going to function and tell our story as if there is no other superheroes, as if there's no Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that all leads me to believe that I doubt, between Kevin Feige's comments, between the way they've handled Daredevil so far, and I'm very curious to see the other Netflix series and see how they handle it, because maybe they'll handle it totally different than Daredevil did. If I had to put money on it, I would bet that we're not going to see Daredevil in Avengers. I would bet that we're not going to see other Netflix characters in the movies whatsoever. Like, even when you look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the movies never reference the TV shows. The TV shows, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they structure themselves so they show the connection, but the movie doesn't show the connection to the TV series. Like, they had the Avengers Age of Ultron began, I should say, with them attacking the Hydra base, right? So what did the TV show do? Well, let's make our episode so we make it look like they found out about that base because of us. Yeah. Let's end the episode with, it's time to call in the Avengers. You have Phil saying that, right? Whereas the movie won't even acknowledge that Phil is still alive, that Coulson is alive again. They acknowledge that Nick Fury's alive, but they won't acknowledge that Phil Coulson's alive. So it's kind of like a one-way street instead of a two-way street. It all leads me to believe that I don't think Marvel has really figured out how they're going to handle the relationship between the television universe and the movie universe. Clearly, they're saying they're in the same sandbox, but I don't think they've figured out how to really properly navigate that. I get the sense from Kevin Feige that he wants to, while they acknowledge they're in the same universe, I get the sense from Kevin Feige that he wants to keep them in different playgrounds. I think he wants to say, television does that, movies do that. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll totally change direction. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. Whether they keep them totally separate, I prefer them separate personally, or whether they're going to come up with a really cool way to really mesh them together and get rid of the obscure references, but just really throw them in together and really make them function that way. I don't know how they're going to do it. My sense is they're going to keep them separate, but who knows? Let's see how it plays out. I bet we're going to know a lot more within the next year. I think within the next year, we'll get a much clearer idea about how the Marvel television universe and their cinematic universes are going to play together. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today, and it's the final question of the day actually, comes to us from Eric Castleberg, who writes, "Hello, Collider crew. I was listening to your take on the new Aladdin movie and also feel a mix of excitement and apprehension." Now, for those of you who don't know what Eric is talking about, as we talked about on Collider Video's Movie Talk the other day, Disney has announced they are developing a live-action Aladdin prequel, which will focus on the realm of the genies and how genies come to be and how they function and how they operate, ultimately leading up to a remake of the animated Aladdin in live action. So they're going to start with an Aladdin prequel focusing on the genie. All right, now that out of the way. That said, I think it is a very smart way to go about it for a reason none of you mentioned. That is, they are attacking the weak link in a true Aladdin live action. Who plays Genie? Instead, they are giving us a Genie prequel to sell everybody on their brand new Genie. Then, once people buy it, they can go ahead with Aladdin with confidence. Or, if everyone hates the new Genie, they can cut the ties there and not have to trash one of their most beloved movies, Aladdin proper. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but it seems like a smart move to me. Thanks a lot for the question, Eric. And that is something that we kind of alluded to as well, that you can't just do an Aladdin live action remake. You especially can't do that if you're going to try to mimic the animated film because, look, there is no other Robin Williams. The Genie was infused with Robin Williams. It's not just that Genie was a character and he was performed great by a great actor. They actually made Genie Robin Williams. Robin Williams was the Genie. The Genie was Robin Williams. And you're just not going to be able to replicate that. So don't try. Try something different. Try something unique. Get a different comedic voice in to make their own incarnation of the Genie if you want. And by doing an Aladdin prequel first or a Genie prequel first, what you're doing is you're allowing the audience, myself included, to become adapted to this new Genie that we're getting. That's not trying to be Robin Williams' Genie. They're trying to make their own incarnation of a Genie. And by doing a prequel first, you get us on board with that because we're not comparing it to the same story that's in Aladdin. We get used to that first, and if it works, then you take that in to doing an Aladdin remake in live action. And then it can work a lot more effectively. So I think you're right. I think that is what part of their strategy is. I think that's part of what their thinking is. But still, one of the big questions is going to be, who is going to voice the Genie? That is the big question. Because even in live action, it's going to be a CG character. So they're going to have to get somebody to voice it. Or, if they start with the Genie as a human being, get that comedian in and then have them do the voice of the CG Genie. That's going to be the big question. So we'll have to keep our eyes on it and we'll see how that turns out. All right, folks, that will do it for us for today for this installment of Collider Mailbag. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, don't forget, if you want to get your question on our show, just email us sometime, anytime you want, at collidervideo@gmail.com, and maybe you'll see your question on. Listen, if you love reading websites and like keeping up to date on all the movie news that's going on, make sure you bookmark our website, collider.com. The incredible team of writers over there, always keeping it up to date, always keeping you informed with what's going on. I highly recommend you bookmark collider.com. And make sure you subscribe to us here on this YouTube channel, our Collider Video YouTube channel. I want to remind you once again, if you're interested in what's going on with our audio-only podcasts, look in the description of this video for the link to information about audio podcasting, and I explain the whole situation there, and hopefully you'll be able to give us some of your feedback. Don't forget, you can follow me on the various social media networks on Twitter or on Facebook. Just follow me at John Campea, and you can also follow Collider Video on Twitter as well, or on Instagram at Collider Video. We hope you follow us there. So that'll do it for me, guys. My name is John Campea for Collider Video, and until next time, bye-bye.